She thought she could cheat and get away with it, but I exposed everything and made sure she lost it all. I, 35M, thought I had a good marriage. My wife, Jessica, 33F, and I had been together for 10 years, married for 7. We had the usual ups and downs, but overall, I thought we were solid. She was my best friend, my partner, the person I trusted the most. Turns out, I was a complete fool, because while I was busy working my ass off to build a future for us, she was sneaking around behind my back. And when I found out, I didn't just walk away. I made sure she regretted it for the rest of her life. It all started with a gut feeling. Jessica had been acting off for a while, more distant, glued to her phone, suddenly dressing nicer for work. At first, I brushed it off. We'd been married for years, things were bound to change over time. But then she started working late. A lot. That was my first real red flag. Jessica's job had never required late nights before, but suddenly she had urgent projects every other evening. When I asked about it, she got weirdly defensive, telling me I was being paranoid. That's when I knew. See, I'm not the type to jump to conclusions, but I'm also not the type to ignore a bad feeling. So instead of accusing her outright, I decided to find out the truth for myself. And holy shit, I found more than I ever expected. One Friday night, she told me she had to stay late at work again. So I did what any suspicious husband would do. I waited until she left, then followed her. She didn't go to the office. Instead, she drove across town to a nice little restaurant, where she met him. Some guy I had never seen before, tall, well-dressed, and way too comfortable with my wife. I watched from a distance as she laughed at his jokes, touched his arm, leaned in close like they were the only two people in the world. It was disgusting. But I didn't confront her, not yet, because if she thought she was getting away with this, she had another thing coming. I needed more proof. One night out with some random guy wasn't enough. I needed everything. So I started digging. First, I checked our phone records. Jessica and I had a shared phone plan, so I could see every call and text she sent. One number stood out immediately. Hundreds of messages, late-night calls, way more than a casual work relationship, and when I looked up the number, it was saved under Michelle in her phone. Yeah, she was dumb enough to think I wouldn't check, so I cloned her phone. It was surprisingly easy. Bought some software, set it up in less than 15 minutes, and suddenly I could see every message she sent in real time. And let me tell you what I found? It made my blood boil. Jessica had been sleeping with this guy for months. His name was David. Apparently, they met at some networking event and one thing led to another. She told him she was in an unhappy marriage and that I was distant and too focused on work, which was hilarious because the reason I worked so much was to give us a comfortable life. She talked about me like I was some boring, lifeless loser, like I didn't matter. And that's when I decided she was going to pay. I didn't just want to expose her. I wanted to completely destroy her life. So I made a plan. Step 1, gather more proof. I set up hidden cameras in our home. Nothing creepy, just in the common areas, like the living room and kitchen. If she ever brought him over, I'd know. Step 2, find out who he was. A little social media digging told me everything I needed to know about David. He was a sales executive, married with 2 kids. Married. That's right. Jessica wasn't just a cheater. She was helping another cheater wreck his own family too. Step 3, expose them both. I waited, and sure enough, it didn't take long. One night, I told Jessica I had an out-of-town work trip, completely fake. I just wanted to see if she'd take the bait. And guess what? She did. David came over about an hour after I left. I watched on the security feed as they made themselves comfortable in my house, drinking my wine, laughing, acting like they weren't 2 of the worst people alive. It took everything in me not to drive back and throw them both out right then and there. But I had bigger plans. I took every screenshot I had, the texts, the call logs, even footage from my home cameras, and put together a little package. Then I sent it. To David's wife, to Jessica's boss, to a few of our mutual friends, just for good measure. Then I waited. The fallout was glorious. David's wife lost her mind. She kicked him out immediately, filed for divorce, and took the kids. Since he was the breadwinner, she took half of everything, including his precious sports car that he'd been bragging about in the texts to Jessica. She got fired. Turns out, her boss didn't appreciate employees screwing around on company time. And when she came home that night expecting me to be none the wiser, I was waiting for her, suitcase packed, divorce papers on the table. She froze. "What's going on?" I leaned back, arms crossed. "I know everything, Jessica." Her face went pale. No, I cut her off. "You don't get to talk. You don't get to lie your way out of this. I know about David. I know about the months of sneaking around. I know about every disgusting thing you said about me." She started crying, big dramatic sobs. "I didn't mean for it to happen." I laughed. "Oh, you meant every bit of it. And now? You get to live with the consequences," she begged. She tried apologizing, saying it was a mistake, that she loved me, that we could fix this. I just shook my head. "You already made your choice, Jessica. Now I'm making mine." I grabbed my bag and walked out the door. She never saw it coming. I walked out of that house and never looked back. Jessica thought she could cheat, lie, and play the victim, but she had no idea who she was messing with. I wasn't going to let her rewrite history and turn me into the bad guy. I wasn't going to be the pathetic husband who stayed and forgave her. I was going to make sure she paid for what she did. And the best part? Her nightmare was just getting started. The second I walked out, I went no contact. Blocked her number, her social media, everything. She had already lost her job because of the affair, but now? She was about to lose everything else. She didn't see the divorce coming. She thought she had time. Time to manipulate me, time to get sympathy, time to convince me to stay. But while she was scrambling, trying to figure out how to fix things, I was already 10 steps ahead. I had a lawyer ready, I had my finances protected, I had proof of her infidelity, which meant she wasn't getting a damn thing from me in the divorce. Jessica tried to call my friends, my family, even showed up at my office crying, but no one wanted to hear it. The texts, the screenshots, the videos from my security cameras, they had already made the rounds. She was poison. Nobody wanted to be around her. And when she realized she had nowhere to run, that's when she finally cracked. 2 weeks after I left, she showed up at my friend Jake's house, where I'd been staying, sobbing. Jake opened the door, took one look at her, and said, "Nah." Then he shut the door in her face. I heard her banging on it, crying, begging to talk to me. I just sat on the couch, sipping my beer. She kept going. "Please, I just want to explain." Jake rolled his eyes. "Dude, you want me to call the cops?" "Nah," I said, standing up. "I got this." I opened the door and looked her dead in the eye. She looked like hell. Her makeup was smudged, her hair was a mess, and she was shaking, like she hadn't slept in days. I almost laughed. "What do you want, Jessica?" I asked. She swallowed. I need to talk to you. Please." I raised an eyebrow. "About what? How you destroyed our marriage? How you spent months lying to my face? How you thought I'd be too much of a pushover to leave you?" Tears spilled down her face. "I made a mistake." "No, you made a choice, over and over again, and now you have to live with it." She sniffled, wiping her face. "I don't have a job. I don't have a place to stay. Not my problem." She blinked, stunned. "You're really going to do this to me?" I smirked. "Jessica, you did this to yourself." Then I shut the door. She screamed in frustration, kicked the door once, then stormed off. Jake whistled. "Damn, that was brutal." "She deserves worse," I muttered. And honestly, she was about to get it. Jessica thought she could drag out the divorce. She thought she could fight for half of everything. But because I had proof of her infidelity, she wasn't entitled to shit. Her lawyer tried to argue for a fair settlement, saying she had supported me emotionally throughout our marriage. My lawyer just handed over the evidence folder and said she can take whatever she brought into the marriage, nothing more. The judge agreed. She walked away with nothing. No house, no car, no money. And the best part? David didn't want her either. Remember how David was also married, his wife Emily? She took everything. Full custody of the kids, the house, half his income. She kicked him out the moment she got the evidence package I sent her. He lost his family, he lost his reputation, and when Jessica thought they could finally be together, he dumped her, just like that. I don't know what she expected. He was a cheating liar, just like her. Did she really think he'd stick around when things got messy? Nah. He cut her loose the second it got tough. Jessica had thrown away our marriage for a guy who didn't even want her. Poetic justice. Jessica's life was already in shambles, but I wasn't done yet. She thought she could cheat on me without consequences, but I had one final move left to play, and it was going to completely destroy her. Jessica had already lost everything: her marriage, her job, her reputation. She had nowhere to go, no one to turn to, and the guy she destroyed our relationship for had abandoned her the moment things got hard. But that wasn't enough for me. She had spent months sneaking around, lying to my face, making me look like a fool while I worked my ass off to give her a good life. I wasn't going to let her just fade into the background and move on like nothing happened. No, I wanted to make sure she felt every ounce of pain she had put me through. So I played my final card. Jessica was already at rock bottom, but I was about to bury her. See, while she was busy crying about how unfair life was, I was busy making sure everyone she ever knew found out exactly who she was. I compiled everything: her texts, her calls, the videos of her sneaking around in my house, and put it all together into a neat little packet. Then, I sent it to her entire family: her parents, her siblings, her cousins, even her grandma. I didn't just expose her to the people who knew me. I made sure the people she cared about the most saw what she had done. Because here's the thing: Jessica had always played the role of the golden child, the sweet, loving daughter, the perfect wife, the one who always had it together. And now, that image was shattered forever. Her mom called me immediately. "Oh my God," she whispered, "is this real?" Every word I said. Silence. Then a quiet, "I'm so sorry." And that's how I knew. Jessica was about to be completely disowned. Within a few hours, Jessica's phone was blowing up. Her parents were furious. Her mom called her a disgrace. Her dad told her to never contact them again. Her sister, who had always been Team Jessica no matter what, called her a home-wrecking idiot. Even her grandma, who had always defended her, told her she was ashamed. Jessica tried to spin the story, tried to say that I had blown things out of proportion and that it wasn't that serious, but they had already seen the proof, and they weren't buying her bullshit anymore. For the first time in her life, Jessica had no one to protect her. She was completely, utterly alone. I could have stopped there, but I didn't. Because Jessica's entire identity was wrapped up in her social status. She cared about what people thought of her more than anything else. So I made sure everyone knew. I didn't post the evidence publicly. I wasn't about to get sued, but I made sure the right people got it. Her friends, her old coworkers, the gym she used to brag about going to, the people in her social circle who had always worshipped her. And guess what? They dropped her like a bad habit. Nobody wanted to be friends with the lying cheater who got caught. She became a joke. She went from being adored to being ignored. And that was the real punishment. Jessica had lost everything. No husband, no job, no family, and no friends left who were willing to help her. She had spent years building this fake, perfect image of herself, and in just a few weeks, I had ripped it apart completely. At first, she tried to deny reality, acting like this was all temporary. She told herself that she'd land on her feet, that she was too smart to stay down for long. But that confidence, it didn't last. Because the world had moved on without her. About 3 months after I walked out, I heard through mutual friends that Jessica had tried to rebuild her life. She started applying for jobs in our industry, reaching out to old contacts, trying to find someone, anyone who would take her back. It didn't work. Thanks to Emily's influence, David's ex-wife, Jessica's name was poison in the industry. Nobody wanted to hire a known cheater who got fired over an affair. So she had to downgrade. She went from working in a respectable corporate office to waiting tables at a diner. And the best part? The diner was right near my office. I didn't go there often, but one day a coworker suggested it for lunch. I walked in, looked around, and there she was, Jessica. She was behind the counter, wearing a cheap uniform, looking exhausted and miserable. She saw me, and her face went pale. She immediately turned around and rushed into the kitchen, probably hoping I wouldn't say anything. But I didn't need to. Because at that moment I knew. She had finally realized just how badly she had screwed up. A week after that diner encounter, I got one last email from Jessica. The subject line, "I miss you." I almost laughed. I opened it out of curiosity, already knowing exactly what it would say. I know I hurt you. I've had a lot of time to think about everything, and I realize now that I made a terrible mistake. I should have never betrayed you. You were always so good to me, and I didn't appreciate it at the time. I guess I thought the grass was greener, but I was wrong. I see that now. I miss you. I miss us. Please, can we talk? Just once? I just want a chance to explain myself. I stared at the message for a second. Then I hit delete. No response, no closure for her, because she didn't deserve it. She wasn't sorry about what she did. She was just sorry that she had nowhere else to go. I wasn't going to be her lifeline. She made her choices, and now she had to live with them. After ignoring her email, I assumed that was the end of it. But a few months later, I heard the final update on her situation. Jessica had to move out of the city. She couldn't afford her rent anymore, and with no stable job, she had no choice but to move back in with her parents. Now, normally, moving back home wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, except her parents hated her now. After I had sent them proof of her affair, they had cut her off completely. So when she finally crawled back, they took her in, but not without making it very clear that they were disappointed in her, that she had ruined her life, and that she had nobody to blame but herself. From what I heard, she barely left the house. She was miserable. She went from being a respected professional, a wife, someone who had a stable life and future, to being a broke, unemployed woman living in her childhood bedroom. And the best part? David never took her back. She had thrown away everything for him, and he had discarded her the second things got difficult. She was completely alone. No husband, no family support, no career, nothing. While Jessica was stuck rotting in the ruins of her own choices, I had completely moved on. I sold the house, the one we had shared, because I didn't need any reminders of her. Bought myself a sleek new condo closer to work, somewhere that was mine and mine alone. My career took off. Without the stress of her lies, I was able to focus, and I ended up getting a major promotion. More money, better benefits, and a team that actually respected me. In my personal life, better than ever. I started dating again. Not right away, but when I was ready. I met someone who actually valued and respected me, who didn't take me for granted. For the first time in years, I felt happy. I had left Jessica behind, completely and permanently, and I knew without a doubt that she would spend the rest of her life regretting what she had done. She thought she could cheat and walk away unscathed, but in the end, I walked away, and she was the one left with nothing.